Young or old, when it comes to fighting bad guys, if you do it long enough, your comic's eventually going to get turned into a movie. Even if you're in a comic that not a lot of people have ever actually heard of. But this is Movie Night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Tonight we'll be taking a look at two comic book adaptations that recently made their way to DVD, the first of which is the critically acclaimed Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. When this fantasy action comedy film starring Michael Cera in the lead role was originally released last August, it didn't do well enough to recoup its $60 million budget. But, perhaps owing to its already cult status, Pilgrim has done far better on home video. And for good reason, it's a fantastic film. Told in inventive 21st century fashion, complete with hundreds of clever video game references, 22-year-old Scott Pilgrim is not just a nerdy local musician. He's also dating high schooler Knives Chow, played by newcomer Ellie Wong, who does a rather terrific job bringing tremendous amount of spark to her character in every scene she's in. Things become complicated for Scott when he then falls in love for the hard-to-get Ramona Flowers, a mysterious girl with a complicated past, played with a constant pout of unattainability on her face by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. In order to win over Ramona as a girlfriend, Scott discovers he must do battle with each of her 6 ex-boyfriends, as well as her one ex-girlfriend from that one time she was bi-curious in college. Luckily, he gets some moral support along the way from his gay roommate Wallace Wells, played by Kieran Culkin, in a scene-stealing role that never fails to entertain. Cera doesn't do much to break from the awkward nerd he has once again been typecast as, but he does do enough to keep audiences rooting for him throughout his epic quest. Scott's fight scenes against the evil exes are certainly the film's strongest aspect, incorporating surprisingly original special effects and on-screen graphics with live action. The visual and audio elements blend together in a refreshingly imaginative way that positively captivates. Like one scene where the second evil ex, a movie star, is humorously introduced to the Universal Pictures theme music, cracking his neck in beat with the tune. The inventive scene transitions themselves are worth the proverbial price of admission. When not delighting with breathtaking action set pieces, the film delights with its fast-paced and witty dialogue that's peppered with dozens of pop culture references. But with any fantasy film, the core relationship between the characters is essential to making all of the glitz and glamour meaningful. And while Scott Pilgrim vs. the World doesn't fail here, it's unfortunately not up to par with the rest of the outstanding aspects of the movie. The entire plot is Scott defying the limitations of conventional physics to be with his one true love. But sadly, save for a single evening stroll through the snow early in the movie, Scott and Ramona don't really exhibit any meaningful chemistry together. Rather, it's Scott's early scenes with Knives that really carry more weight. It's a critical setback in an otherwise flawless film that absolutely entrances with its effects for the entire 112-minute runtime. Imaginative visuals, but lacking heart. Well, now that you've heard my review, let's read some of yours in the YouTube comments. Some overwhelmingly positive responses there, but let's not waste any more time and bring in the Rate-O-Matic. A 9 and a 10. A fantastically original film that is easily one of 2010's best, but the missing chemistry between the two leads prevented me from giving it the highest score possible. But I still thought it was awesome. Overlooking that one minor flaw, you unanimously praise this film for its ingenuity, uniqueness, and the faithful adaptation of its source material, scoring it an amazing. Now let's take a look at tonight's second comic book turned film, Red. An acronym standing Retired Extremely Dangerous, Red features an ensemble cast of Hollywood veterans as former CIA operatives who must unravel a conspiracy involving the highest levels of American government, not only to clear their name, but also just to survive. The film stars Bruce Willis as Frank Moses, an ex-Black Ops CIA agent who is just trying to live out his retirement in peace, and he's also trying to court Sarah Ross, played by the always adorable Mary Louise Parker, a customer service agent that handles Frank's pension fund. When Frank is targeted by a hit squad in the middle of the night, he is once again pulled into his former life of killing bad guys. To help him defend himself, he gathers his former CIA friends, played by John Malkovich, Morgan Freeman, Helen Mirren, and Brian Cox, all of whom do very little to bring their respective characters to life, and honestly feel like they're involved with this film more for the paycheck than anything else. Especially Freeman, who despite receiving top billing, is only on screen for about 15 minutes. Playing the roles of the bad guys, Karl Urban and Richard Dreyfuss bring a bit more character to the screen, but are just as forgettable as the uninspired plot they're stuck in. As former operatives, the entire cast approaches each mundane gunfight and explosion with a disinterested, been there, done that kind of attitude. And while this badass attitude can certainly be an incredibly effective trait for an action protagonist, it is handled so poorly here that it is almost impossible to be excited by anything on screen. Even Sarah, a woman completely out of her element and being shot at, barely seems fazed by the ridiculous events happening around her. Red trudges along from scene to scene with not a thought to momentum or pacing, only occasionally providing the viewer with a quick shootout that fails to advance the plot or affect the main characters in any way. One scene, for example, has Helen Mirren opening fire on some bad guys in a hotel's basement kitchen. Eventually she's hit with a stray bullet and wounded, but it's obvious the injury isn't just insignificant, it's also completely insequential to the plot. Although feeling a bit awkward at times, Frank and Sarah's relationship is really the only thing in this movie worth rooting for, with some of their early scenes together being the highlight of the film. Sadly, Sarah goes missing for nearly the entire second half of the film, as director Robert Schwentke seems to just forget about her. There are moments here that might make you smile, but as an action comedy, Red fails to faithfully deliver on either, with most of the movie feeling like a chore rather than an adventure. Wasted potential, just plain boring. That's what I thought about Red. Now let's see what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Well, some surprising reviews there, so let's bring in the Rate-O-Matic to see how we both scored Red. A 4 and an 8. A much stronger disagreement between us for this film, and as I explained, it felt more like a boring waste of potential that didn't do much to justify its big budget cast. I thought it was just meh. You folks really seem to enjoy it though, being especially fond of the veteran cast, scoring it a great. Well, that does it for tonight's films, so now let's take a look at what's currently playing in theaters with some tweet critiques. Remember, if you're going to the movies this weekend, make sure to submit your Twitter review using the JPMN hashtag to have it featured on an upcoming episode. Next week, in honor of Super Bowl 45, we'll be taking a look at some classic football films. 1974's The Longest Yard, starring Burt Reynolds, and 1998's The Waterboy, starring Adam Sandler. If you haven't already seen these films, I hope you get the chance to buy, rent, or download them before next week's episode, and let me know what you think about them by voting in the polls below or by leaving me a comment and review. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you so much for watching Movie Night. I hope to see you right back here next Friday.